Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Happy Halloween. I am old man Azer. I was born in the 1930s, and I welcome my colleague Jerry Eisenberg. Hey, good morning, Jerry. Happy Halloween.
I don't even know where to begin. I give your mustache 6 minutes before it falls off.
You want to explain what's going on right now?
Do I want to explain what's going on right now? Yes, you're dressed up for Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
You look fantastic. You have like an old school fedora on as your hat. You have glasses on. And then to spice things up and make yourself look as old as you possibly can, you have what I guess is a white mustache and white eyebrows.
They're gray.
Oh, it looks white. Gray, white, same.
Yes.
What's nice is that your mustache will never ever grow in like that in your life. But those eyebrows are almost exactly to a T of what you'll look like when you're older.
Is the mustache upside down? Someone said it's upside down.
It might be.
All right, let's flip that then. Maybe that'll help it stay on. I don't know. Well, anyway, Jamey, if I'm a little tired this morning, it's because I was at Yankee Stadium watching Duke Snyder and Mickey Mantle battle it out last night.
Hope you left before the fifth inning.
Oh, goodness gracious. Anyway, let's get into the show. Happy Halloween, everybody. We'll do some trick or treat with all our controversial players later. But Jamey, who's a player that we love this week?
Not your mustache. Chase Brown is the start of the week. So very excited about his outlook against the Raiders. Unfortunately, we have to change the number. It's no longer 15.5 PPR points for every running back. It's now 13.1, I think. Which would still be fine. It would put him in the number 2 running back range. And just given the way that he's performed, he's had an absolutely brutal schedule. He's come through in some tough matchups with touchdowns, certainly against the Baltimore Ravens, he caught a touchdown. But I think, just based on how many touches he'll get, which should be 15 plus, how this game should unfold at home where they're favorites, this could be one of Chase Brown's, if not maybe his best game of the season. So I have him ranked 19. I feel like it's a little bit low. I probably find a spot or two to get him higher. It's actually pretty good week for running backs, but love the setup for Chase Brown.
Yeah, as Jamey was referring to, a running back has scored 15.5 or more fantasy points in all but one game. Going into last week, it was every game, but then Kareem Hunt didn't quite reach that. He did score a touchdown, though he just didn't really catch any passes. All right, Heath is about to join us. Let's see, before we get on to players to avoid, if we can get Mr. Heath Cummings on here. He was obviously welcome, Keith. I hope you are out trick-or-treating this morning, and that's why you're running a little late.
I got all the treats that I needed last night.
Oh, that's such a dirty thing to say. Why would you say something like that? It's a hater. Who's a player you love this week, Heath?
Derek Carr.
Flip this.
Can I just go back and say all the things that I said about Bo Nix last week? He's facing the Panthers. Carr had 27 fantasy points in week 1 against this team. They just gave up 34 fantasy points to Bo Nix. Derek Carr says he's not a savior. He's your fantasy team savior for this week.
Oh, my goodness. I'd feel so nervous starting him coming off the injury. Where do you have him ranked?
12, 11?
Okay. So would you start him over Kyler Murray against the Bears?
No.
Caleb Williams at the Cardinals?
Yes.
How about Trevor Lawrence, assuming Thomas plays?
I would start Carr.
Okay. All right. Let's go to some players to avoid. By the way, the games we're going to preview today: Tampa Bay at Kansas City, Denver at Baltimore, Indianapolis at Minnesota, Chargers at Browns, Miami at Buffalo, Raiders at Bengals, and New England at Tennessee. Is that it? I feel like there should be one more. I think that's it. All right, players to avoid. Jamey, who are we sitting?
Not sitting him, but I'm nervous about Zay Flowers. We don't know exactly what Deontay Johnson's going to do, how much he'll play, if he'll play at all. But it's not really about that. It's obviously about Denver. And I know he'll move around, and Surtain may not follow him all over the place. But this is still a situation where every number 1 receiver that he's faced of significance has been shut down. And so if you can avoid him, avoid him.
Yeah, there's only one I think that did well, right? Jakobi, call him. Would you put him in?
Meyers has the best game for a number 1 receiver against the Broncos.
6 catches.
Again, you could take Chris Godwin.
Not at all.
You could say Chris Godwin if you want to go that route, but we know what he did against Evans in terms of Surtain.
Right. Evans had 17 yards on 2 catches. Godwin had 53 yards and a touchdown. What were you saying about the slot rate, Heath?
Jakobi Meyers didn't go to the slot hardly at all. Like he did that as an outside wide receiver.
Yeah, that was the best game. Right. He wasn't shadowed by Surtain, but he saw him quite a bit. We'll talk about that a little bit later, that whole slot rate thing. And that does make Zay Flowers a little bit different than the other guys, but yeah, it's a tough matchup. So, this mustache
you cannot keep it on.
Well, there's nothing I can do. It's going to be off. So who should we start over Zay Flowers? Would you start J.K. Dobbins against the Browns?
I do not like J.K. Dobbins either. That was my other choice, depending on what Heath was going to say. So Dobbins in a tough spot. Again, I still have him ranked as a starter. He's 23rd. If he does not score a touchdown, it's going to be bad. His game logs, his performances this season, if he's not finding the end zone, he hasn't exactly produced a good fantasy number. Now, the Browns have allowed 7 rushing touchdowns to running backs this season, so that's in his favor. But this is just a really good run defense that has made things very uncomfortable for a lot of running backs. So you know that they're going to stack the box and try and make Justin Herbert beat them. And I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for J.K. Dobbins. Those are the 2 guys I have as bust alerts in their respective positions this week.
Is he in your top 24, Zay Flowers?
Zay Flowers is 24th.
I know I'm going to start Downs. You're going to start Downs over him. What about Pittman?
I have both Colts receivers over Zay Flowers.
All right, Heath, who are we avoiding this week?
Javonte Williams, Baltimore Ravens, like the one definite true difference maker against the run. Them and the Chiefs, I guess that makes 2. Very concerned that Denver is going to do much of anything offensively in this game, unless it's Bo Nix just throwing deep against these corners. And so I do not have Javonte Williams ranked as a top 24 running back. I would start Zay Flowers over him. I would start J.K. Dobbins over him. I would start Alexander Madison over him. I would start Tank Bigsby even in full PPR over him.
I just want to say a couple things about these running backs. So Michael Pierce for the Ravens is on IR. He's their nose tackle. They have actually allowed fewer yards per carry with him off the field, 2.8 with him off the field. I mean, I feel like it should be something that hurts the Ravens' run defense, but we'll see. All right, but we'll assume they're going to have a great run defense.
So I just have one question, because I agree with Heath 100%, but this is the one thing that I keep going back to with Javonte, because first off, if you can't have success against the Panthers, from our perspective, it's hard to trust him, right? Like going in a tougher matchup. But, and you've brought this up a few times, Adam, this week, that they struggle with pass-catching running backs. And we know what the Broncos like to do with their running backs, is throw to them. Now, he had 4 catches for 8 yards last week. So, it's not like he's going to go out and have a, Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara type of game. But I just wonder if that's where the Broncos lean with him, with McLaughlin, and not necessarily, they're going to run the ball, but not necessarily try and win the game by running between the tackles. And does Javonte have a chance to win there? Now, again, I'm not sitting him. I would not recommend sitting him. I probably have him lower than you do, Heath.
Yeah, you're not starting him.
Yes, I'm not starting him. But I just wonder if that's an opportunity for the Broncos backfield in some capacity, whether it's McLaughlin, whether it's Williams, who knows. I also wonder with Javonte, after the way he ran against the Panthers, does he lose work? Because that was not a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's why you were saying to pick up Jaleel McLaughlin. Okay, so let's sit Zay Flowers. So that's a game. That's an interesting game, Baltimore, Denver. One of the best defenses against obviously one of the best offenses, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Make sure you check out FFT Dynasty. Make sure you check out Beyond the Box Score, the Thursday episode that they do. Make sure you check out CBS Sports Network shows at 1 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And, of course, our Sunday morning programming at 11:30 a.m. We're doing a live Q&A on youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. And, of course, you can watch Jamey on CBS Sports HQ talking fantasy beginning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Now, if you haven't signed up yet for BetMGM, use the bonus code FANTASY, and you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. That's how it works. Download the BetMGM app. Everything's very easy. By the way, I've done this piece of cake. Sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, signing up on BetMGM is easier than putting on a fake mustache. This thing is driving me crazy. News and notes. Jordan Love missed practice. We don't know if he'll play. He's hopeful. Jared Goff missed practice. We're expecting him to play. They're playing each other. Detroit is at Green Bay. Will Levis has a chance to play this week. Do you guys want him to play, or do you want Mason Rudolph?
Rudolph.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Just hand the ball to Tony Pollard.
As you've already heard, Derek Carr is likely to start, and Bryce Young is going to start for Carolina. Running back news, Tyrone Tracy's in the concussion protocol against Washington. Doug Peterson is optimistic about Travis Etienne at Philadelphia. Jonathan Brooks looks like he could be coming back this week. He's practicing in full, might make his debut. We'll talk about that game tomorrow. They're facing the Saints. Does this make Chuba Hubbard an easy sit if he plays? Brooks plays.
No, not at all.
Okay.
If Brooks plays, I think I'd probably have Chuba in the Javonte range.
Let's see. Tony Pollard missed practice, which is just a Wednesday missed practice. Don't think it's a big deal. And Tajay Spears was limited, hoping he gets back this week. Josh Jacobs missed practice, but he said he's going to play. And Jerome Ford was limited for Cleveland. Tonight's game, Allen Lazard is out at wide receiver. The Jaguars wide receivers are trending in the right direction. Amari Cooper and Curtis Samuel are questionable. I didn't even know Amari Cooper had an injury, we'll confess. But he's on the injury report. I think it's a wrist injury for Cooper. T. Higgins day-to-day. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Tyler Lockett limited. DK Metcalf missed practice, but he could get back on the field today. And Calvin Ridley missed practice. Tight end Dallas Goedert missed practice. Noah Fant was limited. Will Dissly of the Chargers been good a couple weeks in a row. He missed practice. The big offensive line news, Cleveland left tackle Jedrick Wills practice. Houston's going to be without offensive lineman Jared Patterson tonight. Jaguars might get guard Ezra Cleveland back this week. He left last week's game early. The Raiders, their center Andre James. This could be a bad one for their lousy run game, but he missed practice. Atlanta could be getting Drew Dahlman, their center, back soon. He's off IR. 3 Packers offensive linemen missed practice, so we're going to keep an eye on that. That's not the defensive front against Detroit that you want to be missing 3 starters. And on defense, the Jets come into tonight's game a little beat up with a safety out, with C.J. Mosley out. And the Texans are beat up. Jimmy Ward, a safety and a linebacker for both teams. Good players are out this week. And we'll update you on the other stuff. But I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah being ruled out for Cleveland, that's a big one. Michael Pierce going on IR for Baltimore. Tennessee has their pass defense, whether it's coincidence or not, has been much worse the last 2 weeks with L'Jarius Sneed out. And they faced New England this week, and Sneed did not practice. And that will do it for the news.
There's 2 big ones in Green Bay, Evan Williams and Jair Alexander. Both left last week's game, both missed practice on Wednesday. Clearly, Detroit would love to not see them there. And Trevor Lawrence, with those guys off the field, Alexander's injury was late, but Williams, when they left, everything I read about Green Bay was like their secondary was just not great. Trevor Lawrence had his best fantasy game of the season.
That would be big, because I don't think Jared Goff's he's never had a great game in Green Bay, and I think he's only topped 250 passing yards once in Green Bay in his career.
And they are getting Quay Walker back, though, their linebacker. He will play. We'll do one question for each game after this break on Fantasy Football Today, kids.
Saturday, CBS Sports with 2 big games. First, undefeated Army looks to ground rival Air Force. Then it's big time. Number 1 Oregon takes on defending champs Michigan. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
One question for each game. Let's go to Tampa Bay at Kansas City. Would you sit all Buccaneers other than Cade Otton?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to get away from Rachaad White and or Bucky Irving in PPR based on what we saw last week. And for what it's worth, let's give Baker Mayfield some credit. Loses receivers and still comes out and has another 28-point fantasy day. Like, it's just, he's finding a way to get it done. But I think just based on the defense and the matchup, it's tough to say they're starters.
All right, next game. Let's go to Denver at Baltimore. Courtland Sutton, trick or treat?
Treat.
What did you just put up there?
Adam tapes cotton balls to face. Costume is ready.
These glasses are like very old glasses, too. You can't tell. There's somewhere that I'm missing.
I hope a treat. I've got him ranked like right on the border of trick or treat, but I'm probably starting him.
Sutton or Zay Flowers?
Sutton for me.
Ooh, Sutton for Jamey, Zay for Heath.
I know Zay's had a better season. Have they had the same amount of good games? Like,
no,
15-point games?
I don't think so.
I'm sure there's a cutoff.
I think you'd be surprised at how close it is.
I'm going to say it's 4-2, Zay, but let's take a look. How many? 15 points? Let's see. 1, 2, 3
for Sutton.
Okay, then it's 4-3. And they probably had the same amount of games with 4 or fewer points. 2 for Flowers. No, how about 6 or fewer points? 3 of those for Flowers. That's crazy. Indianapolis at Minnesota. TJ Hockenson, trick or treat?
Trick.
It's a trick, but like I've got some teams where I've been starting just miserable tight ends every week, and Hockenson was on the on IR for me. I'm probably just going to go ahead and start him, even though I don't have him ranked as a top 18 guy this week.
I read a really good article on ESPN about the Vikings offense, and it made me a little more hopeful for TJ Hockenson because it talked about how they don't really have a guy that works in that area of the field. You know, they run their offense through 2 players, Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson. And Hockenson gives them a dimension that they just haven't had. And I didn't really think about that, but that's a really interesting point. It also brought up some cool stats on the Vikings. Like, could you imagine? I mean, just think about this. Justin Jefferson is having such a good season. He's quarterback proof, whatever. They also are averaging the fewest pass attempts per game in the NFL. And when we evaluated Justin Jefferson in the preseason, you know, it's the Vikings. They're going to have so much volume, it's not going to matter. If I had told you in the preseason that Darnold would be the quarterback and they were going to have the fewest pass attempts in the NFL, just think about what we would have thought for Jefferson. So that's amazing.
What have the pass attempts been since London?
Still pretty low. I don't even think he's had a 30 pass attempt game. And the other thing that the article mentioned is that he holds the ball, I believe, longer than any quarterback, Sam Darnold, in the NFL. Once the ball is snapped, he's holding the ball. He's like waiting and waiting and waiting. So keep an eye on that left tackle situation for sure. But it's interesting stuff.
That's a big part of the reason they have. I don't think there's necessarily a huge like run heavy desire in Minnesota, but he has a 10% sack rate, which is extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
And then also he's average, like they throw the ball 15 yards downfield every time they throw it. So it's just chunk play after chunk play after chunk play. And all of a sudden we don't have the ball anymore.
He has 31 passes.
Heath, I don't know how you track this or not, but like you should be making offers for JJ McCarthy in Dynasty.
Yeah.
Right. Like if Darnold can do this, then McCarthy,
right,
theory could be really good.
You know, especially if somebody needs something, you know, that is a contender.
All right. Sorry. Back to one question for each game. Chargers are at Cleveland. Who is the best wide receiver in this Chargers-Browns game? Only one wide receiver has had more than 7 targets against the Chargers. It was last week. It was Chris Olave. But who's the best wide receiver in this game?
Ladd McConkey.
Miami is at Buffalo. Who's the second best wide receiver in this game?
Jalen
Waddle.
Okay. Well, are you assuming Cooper's going to play or no?
I have Cooper ranked the lowest of all the main receivers in this game.
Behind Shakir and Coleman? Wow. All right. I mean, listen, the Dolphins have not had good history throwing the ball against the Bills in the Tua era, even Tyreek Hill. That's terrible. All right, Las Vegas.
He's also left 2 games against Buffalo in his career.
Has he? Because I thought he played full game. At least in the Tyreek Hill era, I thought he had played games.
Well, he left the first concussion that he suffered. That was, I think it's the first concussion he suffered.
This week, you mean? This year?
No, but 2022.
Was that the non-concussion?
Right. All right. Anyway, let's go to Las Vegas at Cincinnati. Jakobi Meyers, trick or treat?
Treat.
All right. Bengals have allowed 15 or more PPR fantasy points to 6 wide receivers in their last 5 games. New England at Tennessee. Rhamondre Stevenson or Calvin Ridley?
Rhamondre, if Drake May clears the protocol. Ridley, if it's Jakobi Brissett.
So I'll go Ridley in full PPR. I think I'll go Rhamondre. No, I'm going to go Rhamondre across the board.
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez is the type of cornerback that I don't know. Look, he's kind of up and down. But I always say this about Ridley. He does not do well against cornerbacks, like good cornerbacks that shadow him. I'm almost positive that he's going to shadow Calvin Ridley. Also, Stevenson, like when they're close or winning, that's when he has good games. So what's the spread in that game?
3.5.
Patriots?
I'm pretty sure it's Titans.
You could have told me either one. I would have believed. Right? Let's see. Patriots. That is, Titans. Spelled it wrong. I can spell Titans, right? It is the Titans minus 3.5. Okay.
If you had to watch that game or the 5th inning of the Yankees World Series game? What would you rather watch?
Oh my gosh. So I was at the game.
Oh,
and yeah, I went first Yankees
you
World
didn't throw anything at anybody, right?
No.
Good.
I was so pissed in that inning, though. They're just such a joke of a World Series team. I mean, they've been doing this kind of not this bad, but they've been doing this kind of stuff all year. They're a terrible base running team, terrible defensive team, mental lapses. Cover first base, man. What are you doing? Cover first base.
What was he pointing at?
He thought, the ball had a lot of spin on it. He thought Rizzo was going to be able to get it. I guess he didn't realize how much spin was there and was hit so slowly. But that's totally on him. I don't know if he took responsibility. I haven't read any of the articles. But, you always say this is the worst ever. You don't know. There's 100-something years of baseball history. That's got to be one of the worst innings in baseball history, given the stakes. Terrible.
I think they said, if I'm not mistaken, the largest comeback in a clinching game.
Awful. All right. Well, it frees up my Friday and Saturday night at least. All right. It is now time for the Workhorse to Watch segment.
What are you going to do instead?
Sleep. All right. Ready, Jamey? Now it's time for the Workhorse to Watch segment, brought to you by Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs, powered by Snapdragon, the fastest, most intelligent Windows PCs ever. In this segment, we'll identify a player whose battery just doesn't seem to run out, similar to Copilot Plus PCs. Jamey, who is our Workhorse to watch?
I mean, Kareem Hunt's been as good a workhorse as you can find in the NFL lately since he's taken over for Carson Steele, but obviously the injured Isaiah Pacheco. And it feels like they're going to just run him into the ground until Pacheco comes back. So for fantasy managers that have been relying on Kareem Hunt, you want to see Isaiah Pacheco take his time because the Chiefs are undefeated and looking like they're going to make another Super Bowl run. And until then, until Kareem Hunt comes off the field and gets replaced, he is going to be at least a number 2 running back. It's a tough matchup in week number 9 against a good Bucs run defense. And as we've seen, he's definitely touchdown dependent. But are you betting against him at this point? So he's his motor's running, and keep him in your lineup.
Would you start Kareem Hunt or J.K. Dobbins?
I start Kareem Hunt. They're very similar, and so both tough matchups. I'll lean toward the guy who's actually been a little bit more consistent. That's been Hunt.
All right.
Dobbins
for Heath. That was the Workhorse to Watch segment, brought to you by Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs. Whether you're multitasking like never before, working far from power outlets, or sketching your own ideas into existence, you can do it with the new Microsoft Copilot Plus PC powered by Snapdragon. Battery life varies by device and with usage and settings. It brings us right into Tampa Bay at Kansas City. And Dave is going to join us. Dave wanted to show off his costume. Hello, Dave. You have a costume?
What's up, Grandpa?
Hey. Hello, Dan. What is your costume, young man?
Well, I actually have the scariest costume of all of FFT.
Okay.
I don't want to scare anybody because it's really spooky. But
yeah.
You should get the music ready. You want to see it? Are you sure you can handle it?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Pittman! Oh, it's Michael Pittman. Oh, 12.7 PPR points per game with Flacco. Yeah. Oh.
Dave has a Michael Pittman shirt. That is quite a shirt.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, Dave. Why don't you stick around for one game?
Sure.
Does that sound? All right. Tampa Bay's at Kansas City. Spooky name of the game, Arson Steele. All right. Stat of the game, number 1.
Is that going to be something you do for every game?
Every game today, yeah.
I'm ready to leave the show now.
Okay, thank you. Tampa Bay has allowed 36 or more fantasy points to 3 quarterbacks in their last 4 games. Kirk Cousins twice and Lamar Jackson. So start or sit Heath Cummings, Baker Mayfield.
He is a high-end QB2. You may not be able to find.
It's Patrick Mahomes. It was a Tampa Bay is bad against.
I was like, what are you doing?
It's my memory. I'm sorry.
There goes that dementia.
I was just planning on thinking of a better spooky name for each game as we go through the game. So yeah, I'm not starting Patrick Mahomes. I would start Baker Mayfield over Patrick Mahomes, but they're neither one of them are top 12 quarterbacks, and I hope I can do better.
All right, I want everybody's opinion on that. Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes? The matchup is so different here.
Actually, I'll go Mahomes this week.
Same here.
I think they're both going to be, right around 20 fantasy points. It's hard to expect more from Mahomes just based on how the season has gone. But this is a real tough test for Baker, and I think he's going to struggle. So Last week he kind of got by, I think, based on the defense that he faced, and Atlanta is going to hopefully be good for Dak Prescott this week. I'm nervous about Baker.
Where do you have Carr compared to Baker and Mahomes?
In the same range.
Carr, Baker, Mahomes for me.
Okay. I've got Mahomes right in front of Carr and then Baker behind them.
Okay. Baker's 29 more fantasy points in 5 straight games, and a lot of people are going to leave him on the bench, understandably so. All right, so Dave, talk to me about the running backs here and what you expect from Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. We know the Chiefs, they are phenomenal. The fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs, 3 yards per carry to running backs. But, of course, you get the passing game numbers here. So thoughts on on White and Irving?
I like White better than Irving. Certainly
White
the PPR factor helps. And Rachaad White, like, give him credit. He's playing on third downs. He's playing near the goal line more so than Irving. At least that was the case last week. I expect that to continue. Still expect him to see more targets and catches. Last week was the first time that Irving had more than 3 catches in a game. So I can't buy into him having 7 targets and 7 catches again. I need to see that again before I confidently start him. I'll use him as a bye week replacement running back. Rachaad White just outside of my top 24 in PPR.
Any strong disagreements? Any hot takes on White?
They're lower for me, but I agree.
Okay.
I start Rico Dowdle over both Bucs running backs.
Okay. How about Javonte at Baltimore or a Bucs running back?
Both Bucs running backs over Javonte.
I'll take White, Williams, Irving.
I've got it. Williams, White, Irving.
All right. Actually, one of the storylines in this game is, can the Chiefs score against a bad defense? And looking at what they've done this year, they don't really strike you as a great offense, but they can put up 26, 27 points. They put up 27 against Baltimore, 26 against New Orleans, 27 at Las Vegas. That's pretty relevant, obviously, because you want the Bucs to be throwing a lot. And if he throws a lot, he threw 50 passes last week. He threw 45 the week before. If he's throwing a lot, Rachaad White's probably going to, it's pretty realistic for him to have 5 catches. That's what he had last week.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what you're banking on. You need it. Any interest, Jamey, in Jalen McMillan or a Tampa Bay receiver?
I'd like to still stash him. We had this conversation yesterday on CBS Sports Network. He was one of the most dropped players based on our roster trends from the moves made Tuesday night. And I think we all agreed, Heath, Robert, Turbin, and myself, that was a little too soon to completely give up on him. Clearly, if you have to make some, decisions like, Josh Downs was available, you're dropping Jalen McMillan for him, or, Cedric Tillman, you wanted to make that move. I get it. But if you can still stash him, I would do so. He played the Godwin role. And if they're going to be throwing 40 plus times consistently, which I think is going to be the case, then he's going to have some big games ahead.
Okay.
Scream Hunt.
That's pretty good. What did I have? Arson Steele. I think Arson Steele is better than Scream.
No, they got the Paramount franchise. Scream.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Good point. Okay, Cade Otton is a top 5 tight end. Who are the tight ends you would start over Cade Otton this week?
McBride, Bowers, Kelsey, and I think that's it for me.
Just McBride and Bowers.
What about Evan Ingram? What about David Njoku?
Just
No, I start
McBride
Otton
and
over
Bowers.
Okay. I like Ingram because I think that the Jaguars are going to have to throw a lot, and I don't know who's healthy at receiver for them right now. And then Njoku, I don't think Cade Otton's catching 2 touchdowns again. And I do think volume will be in his favor, but Njoku's going to have good volume too. I do have Otton one spot. I have Njoku right now. I'm thinking about making that switch.
All right. It is the best matchup on paper. Chiefs
And
give
Ingram has the worst matchup on paper.
Yep.
Chiefs give up the most fantasy points to tight ends. Okay, Mahomes, you guys sort of agree. Well, Heath has him even lower. I think Heath has him 20th. Dave and Jamey have Mahomes 14th. Is that right, or is that outdated? Let's see.
He's 14th for me.
I got him at 16.
Okay, and Heath has him 20th. And Kareem Hunt. Okay, we just talked about him a little bit earlier in our previous segment, our Microsoft segment here. He's a low-end starter. He's got 20 or more carries in 3 straight games. The Bucs run defense, it is pretty surprising to see. They're giving up 5 yards per carry to running backs. They're usually more like 3.5 yards per carry to running backs, but they've only had a healthy defensive line for 3 games. In those 3 games, Kamara was terrible. Derrick Henry was very good. And then Bijan Robinson was good and Algier wasn't. So it's hard to say. But it doesn't seem like they have the run defense that they used to have. And then, Jamey, what are your thoughts on the Chiefs wide receivers in this game? Hopkins only played 32% of the snaps last week.
He'll play more. I do like the fact that Worthy has 8 targets each of the last 2 weeks. So, trying to get him going. Scored a touchdown last week, but minimal yards on 4 catches. So he's I think, desperation number 3 receiver, with the chance of some big plays. If Mahomes is going to win, somebody else is going to have to help Kelsey. Kelsey could have a 2-touchdown game, but that just hasn't been the profile for this season. So I would say Hopkins, Worthy, they're very similar. I would lean toward Worthy if you have to make a choice.
And are they better than Zay Flowers or Courtland Sutton?
No.
Are they better than, let's see, Amari Cooper?
No, I'm not there yet.
Nope.
How about Tank Dell tonight or a Chiefs receiver?
Dell.
Yeah.
It's just such a shame because the Bucs their pass defense is so bad. But I guess it'll be a big Kelsey game. Start Travis Kelsey, and looks like you guys want to start the Chiefs DST. Not a great DST week, so
It's a bad DST week.
Yeah.
Baker, despite his big games, has been turnover prone.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. All right, Dave. Thank you very much. Happy Halloween, sir.
Happy Halloween to you. Don't forget to take your Metamucil.
And we'll be right back after this advertisement on Fantasy Football Today.
CBS Sports HQ, giving you college football coverage unlike anyone else.
We're talking Big Ten.
Pre- and post-game coverage.
Are you encouraged with the way that this team responded?
Along with breaking news,
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
highlights, and expert analysis.
That streak could be in jeopardy here.
What was your main takeaway from this game? How impressive was his domination?
That really changed the football game.
Let's go ahead and have some more fun.
Another wild ending.
The chaos continues.
Turn to CBS Sports HQ.
Denver is at Baltimore. Spooky name of the game: Patrick Surtain to die. That's my worst one. That one's terrible. I couldn't think. I looked
I'm
at
gonna
the
think of a
rosters.
better one for sure.
I looked at the rosters for both teams. I just had nothing. Stat of the game.
Boo Knicks.
You know what? I have other boos coming up.
Boo Knicks.
I have Bua Tonga Bailoa. I didn't want to keep doing boo, but Boo Nix is better than Patrick Surtain to die. When does Lamar Jackson?
That's so terrible.
When does Lamar Jackson throw a lot of passes? 34 or more pass attempts in 4 games. 3 of them were losses, and the other one was a 41-38 win at Cincinnati. 26 or fewer pass attempts in 4 wins by 7, 10, 25, and 3 points. So I don't know if it's going to be just that simple, but so far when they've lost or been in a shootout, he's throwing the ball a lot. That's one of your stats of the game. So we've already talked about Zay Flowers quite a bit.
The spread makes it seem as if it's going to be a Derrick Henry game.
Oh, God, I have so much of that mustache in my mouth. It's a horrible mistake. All right. So anyway, the spread is 9 points. Ravens at home, 9-point favorites here. Who are the great starts in this game?
Great starts: Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. Next game.
I'm still starting Zay with confidence.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So let's get into that a little bit. Get a little advanced statty here on the wide receivers who have faced and failed against Patrick Surtain. Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Mike Evans. They were terrible. They had Metcalf played in the slot only about 12% of the snaps. The others were right around 30%. Zay Flowers is 40% of the slot of the snaps in the slot, right around there. And I don't know how that's going to be impacted, by the way, with Deontay Johnson if he's playing. So it's a little, I guess that's a better outlook. But Surtain will, I would say, from what I've watched, about half the time he'll probably follow those other guys, Pickens and Metcalf, Wilson, and Evans into the slot. So the guys who have had success against Denver scored 13 or more PPR fantasy points. Jalen Coker, 73% slot rate. Cedric Wilson, 52%. Chris Godwin, 64%. Tyler Lockett, Xavier Legette, Jakobi Meyers. Lockett, 29%. Legette, 29%. Meyers, only 11%. But I think the guys who have had the highest slot rates have had the most points.
Jamey, it's true. We generally see these corners that are so good, like on an island by themselves, have a lot more success against the big wide receivers. Like with Lattimore, with Mike Evans, we've seen DK Metcalf struggle with the corners a lot, and the smaller, shiftier guys, it's harder for those guys to get locked down.
Every cornerback will tell you they would rather play a bigger receiver than a smaller, shifty guy, just because of what those guys do. Look, it's not with any of these situations. And we've had these conversations about every guy you listed, Adam. You know, I think I tend to lean more toward Surtain, and I think he probably tends to lean more toward the receiver. It's just there's a track record here of what, and it's not just Surtain, it's this defense, you know, so it's not just, you know, we shouldn't just completely say it's 1v1. You know, they do a good job to take away a team's number one receiver. It's the scheme that they do also. And let's give Riley Moss some credit too. He's having a good season. So I think just in terms of when you're looking at risk reward, it's very difficult to bench Zay Flowers because it could just be one play because they don't throw the ball that much on a week-to-week basis. But when you have a 9-point favorite with a running game like that, with an offense in Denver that I think is played over its head, you know, Heath, I think, sort of alluded to this before, you know, Bo Nix, what he was able to accomplish last week versus what he's going to have to deal with this week. And I know the defense for Baltimore is not good and it's beat up on all those things. They're going cross country, having to probably chase points. It could be ugly.
Isn't that good for Bo Nix, though?
But that's not his game, though. I mean, it certainly could be. You know, he got the 2 touchdown passes against the Chargers. That was great. And it was, you know, a lot of it was late. So it's not necessarily a starter sit Bo Nix conversation. It's, will Baltimore have to do a lot in this game? And if you're Baltimore, like, you know where the ball's going first. It's Derrick Henry. Does Lamar Jackson have to force the situation against Surtain? And he might, because he's not afraid. He's an MVP candidate. But now you have another player on the field that they may want to showcase a little bit, show off the new toy, as we talk about all the time whenever they get a trade. So there's just a lot of things working, I think, in the negative more so than the positive for Zay Flowers. And it's not like every game has been perfect for him. You mentioned it. 4 games with 15-plus PPR points. They played 8 games.
Yeah. Yeah, he's had those games where Jackson's barely thrown the ball, which is what your concern is here, obviously, with the 9-point spread.
Correct.
I was also thinking along the same lines as you, Heath. Is Zay Flowers is not the typical, I'm going to put my number one cornerback on this guy and have him follow him on the field. He's just different than Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, DK Metcalf. Is a completely different player, which is what I tried to highlight yesterday on the show, just his profile and what he's doing. But okay, and then obviously we're not.
And I'll just give you by comparison. Granted, it's a lot of injuries at the receiver spot and a lot of bye weeks. When I was doing this with Metcalf and Wilson and Pickens, they were barely top 30 receivers. Like, I still have Zay Flowers 24.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, that's good perspective here. Obviously, we're not going to start Deontay Johnson or Rashad Bateman. So what about the Baltimore tight ends? Heath, start Mark Andrews?
I think you're probably starting Mark Andrews unless you were able to pick up Cade Otton. He's a top 12 tight end for me. I don't really feel like he's back. I do think he's still a touchdown dependent tight end, but if you're going to be a touchdown dependent tight end, it's good to play on maybe the best offense in football.
And we've got, so how about, I'm looking for chat questions here. How about David Njoku against the Chargers or Mark Andrews?
Njoku.
Okay. And on the other side of the ball. All right. So why should I not start Bo Nix coming off his best game? In fact, he's got 3 really good games, 24.7 or more in 3 of his last 4 games in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues. And now he's facing a team that gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks to face the Ravens have scored 24 or more fantasy points. How am I sitting Bo Nix at this point? The great Bo Nix, Heath.
Yeah, I think because of the way that he is successful and the fact that, like, one of the things that I mentioned about him last week that I like so much is he's tied for 4th amongst quarterbacks in red zone rush attempts. And he has, I think, 4 rushing touchdowns now. And I'm not super excited about him running or getting to the red zone all that often in this game. So there's certain quarterbacks that you would feel a lot better if you said you're going to have to throw it 40 times because they're playing from behind. And Bo Nix is not one of those quarterbacks. He's still ranked higher than we would have ever thought coming into the season. I think I've got him at QB 16 this week, and I'm kind of tempted to move him a couple of spots higher, but he's not quite a top 12 guy.
Okay. I'm starting him. Well, actually, to be honest with you, the waivers ran. I don't know if I got him, but I plan to start him over Tua.
Agreed.
Yep.
And I see back-to-back here. I would plan to start him over Caleb Williams in a league.
I would.
I've got Caleb one spot higher.
Yeah. All right. So that's Bo Nix, low-end starter or high-end backup, we could call him this week. Javonte Williams, we're going to try to avoid. Courtland Sutton or Javonte Williams in a half PPR league?
Sutton.
All right. Sutton is a top 30 wide receiver. Jamey is the highest on him at 21. Heath has him 27, I believe. And we're not going to trust Adam Troutman just yet. Okay. That is it for Baltimore. And, I'm sorry. What about the DSTs? Do you like a DST in this game?
No.
Not really. I think the Ravens might be low in top 12. Wouldn't be surprised if Bo Nix throws a couple interceptions.
All right, tough guy. What's your spooky team name for Broncos Ravens? Did you get one?
I said Bo Nix as soon as we started immediately. Like it was probably tough guy.
Lamar, one of the people on this show, I'm not going to say who, rhymes with Hafer. Lamar Axeman, and then he wrote, "That's terrible." So he knew right away it was a loss. Indianapolis is at Minnesota. Spooky name of the game: Garrett Brad Burial Ground.
Wow, it's awful. I hope you didn't spend very much time on this.
You can tell I did not spend that much time on it, but go ahead. You can think of one. Go ahead. But it can't be. You can't do boo. Can't do boo anymore.
No, you can't use boo again. Okay, got it.
It's the easiest one. Stat of the game.
How about son of Sam Darnold?
Excellent. Way to go. Stat of the game number one.
Massacre.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, but he's not playing.
But he's also hurt, so it's a massacre.
There you go. And speaking of which, that brings us to stat of the game number one, right? We'll just say Sam Darnold struggles under pressure, lost his left tackle for the season. They traded for Cam Robinson. The Colts are 24th in pressure rate, according to True Media. But in weeks 1 and 8 with DeForest Buckner, they are 4th in pressure rate. Now, that's got to be a little bit of a coincidence. They have played Houston in both of those games, and the Texans' offensive line is bad. But that is just something to watch here. Someone did ask in our previous game, Bo Nix or Sam Darnold. How do you feel about that? Bo Nix or Sam Darnold?
Darnold.
Heath?
Darnold.
Darnold or Mahomes?
Darnold.
Bo Nix or Mahomes?
Nix.
Mahomes. No, I'm sorry. Nix. I think I have Nix 13 and Mahomes 14.
And the other stat of the game here is that the Vikings are just a great team for fantasy football. You get Jefferson's production. You get Aaron Jones's production. Darnold's been a pleasant surprise. And on the other end, they see the most pass attempts per game in the NFL, the 5th most running back targets, the 2nd most wide receiver targets in the NFL. So, Jamey, what does that mean for the Indianapolis Colts offensively?
I mean, at this point, you're starting both receivers in some capacity. You're obviously starting Jonathan Taylor. And Joe Flacco's in the streaming discussion. You know, he's right in the same range as Bo Nix and Patrick Mahomes. And, you know, for me, Derek Carr, I know Heath is higher on Carr, but, you know, those type of quarterbacks. Look, Flacco's appeared in 3 games. One he came in the first quarter, but in 2 of those 3, he's scored 19 or more fantasy points. Like, this is a great matchup. Like, the Colts did us a favor. You know, Richardson would have been a tough trust, and we would have said avoid the receivers probably even in a good matchup. Now they're must-start guys, you know, and clearly Downs has been better than Pittman, but given the matchup, like to me, it's exciting to start Michael Pittman, which I haven't said very much this year.
So who are some players that you would start Michael Pittman over?
Zay Flowers.
Yeah, let me go. How about some running backs? Would you start Michael Pittman or Jonathan Taylor, PPR?
I'd stick with Taylor.
Sometimes I say obvious ones, and then I work my way down.
Okay.
Michael Pittman or Tony Pollard?
Pollard.
Michael Pittman or J.K. Dobbins?
Pittman.
At full PPR, I'd go Pittman. Everything else, Dobbins.
Chuba Hubbard?
Hubbard if no.
Yeah.
Brooks. Pittman if Brooks.
Okay. Hubbard with a good matchup against the Saints. And Josh Downs, everything we said about Michael Pittman, it's even better for Josh Downs. We like him better.
So in the 3 games for both of them, Downs was 15.5 PPR points or more. Pittman was 12.5 PPR points or more.
And Downs with Joe Flacco has had a 27.6% target share. Pittman's had an 18% target share. So far, that's really been his guy, Josh Downs. Jonathan Taylor, just real quick here, I don't want to get too sidetracked here. Do you like this for Taylor, Flacco over Richardson? Is it better? Is it a push? What do you think? Is it worse?
I think it's better because there'll be some opportunities in the passing game. Remember, they didn't play together.
Did they have one game? They had one game together, and he had 21 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown.
That was the game he got hurt.
3 catches for 20 yards against Pittsburgh. That was the game that Richardson got hurt. Yeah.
I just think the offense is going to move. Like, they're going to be more scoring opportunities.
And you're not worried about the matchup here with Taylor?
No.
It's got to be so overwhelming to sit a player like Taylor. Like, he's not ranked in the top 5, but he's certainly a must-start guy.
Okay. And then sit the tight ends for the Colts. Sam Darnold. We got a lot of Sam Darnold questions, I think. So let me see if I can find some of them. But Darnold or Dak?
Darnold. That's close.
Darnold.
Flacco or Tua?
Flacco.
And Brian Thomas Jr. or Colts wide receivers, PPR?
Thomas if he's healthy.
Yep.
Pittman or Chase Brown?
Brown.
Flacco or Caleb Williams?
Flacco.
Caleb for me.
Okay. Start Aaron Jones. He's like 15th-ish in the rankings. Look, honestly, running back is just really good this year.
Yep.
It's just really good. Guy being 15th is not an indictment on him. It's tough to crack the top 12. And then start Jefferson. Any interest in Naylor or Addison?
No, definitely not Naylor.
Yeah. I mean, if there was it could be a squeaky wheel game for Addison, this would be it. I think he and his family are unhappy with his targets.
And Naylor actually has more targets than Addison over the last 2 games. But we'll sit them. And then TJ Hockenson is not a top 12 guy. He is for Dave in full PPR. I think he's 10th. The Colts do allow the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. Tight ends caught a touchdown in 4 of the last 6 games, but this is one where you probably want to wait and see if you can.
I think, we said it this week. Heath reiterated it today. Like, if your tight end has been of the streaming variety that has not hit, and Hockenson's been on your IR, you're dropping that guy. You're playing Hockenson. If you picked up Cade Otton or Njoku, who was cut, or Ingram at one point, who was cut, Ferguson, you can make that call if you want to. I'd start Ferguson. Kraft, with or without Jordan Love is certainly, a different story. But for the most part, I think, Hockenson, give him a week, see what happens, and then make your decision.
Yeah, unfortunately, you might have to give him a little bit more than a week because I could see him playing, 50% of the snaps or something. I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's give him a week and reassess on TJ Hockenson. But Hockenson or Hunter Henry against the Titans?
If Drake May plays, it's Henry. If Drake May's out, it's Hockenson.
Kmet or Hockenson? A question from Ryan.
Kmet.
Hockenson for me.
All right. And then Josh Downs or Zay Flowers? Josh Downs. Okay. I didn't say, someone's telling me they said no snap count for Hockenson. I didn't see that, but okay. Sometimes they say that and it's not necessarily going to factor in, but all right, that's good. If that's true, that's good. Chargers are at Cleveland. Spooky name of the game. Cedric Killman. That's not bad, right?
I don't know that I can do better than that one, Adam.
Okay, good.
That's really good.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. Something to watch in this game. The Browns average the 8th most plays per game offensively. The Chargers see the 4th fewest plays per game defensively. Something's got to give. Who do we love? Who's an easy start? Easy start in this game, Jamey. Chargers at Browns.
Easy start. Wow. Njoku.
Yep.
That's it, huh? Okay. This is an interesting game. There's a lot of fringy guys here. A lot of, going to be a lot of questions, I think, starter sit wise. Who's the next best guy? Is it just a flex?
Dobbins.
Yep.
Okay. So Dobbins, 5 straight games, averaging 3.8 yards per carry or worse. In fact, he's averaging 3.2 yards per carry in his last 5 games. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, last year when he wasn't on the field, the Browns were like 0.7 of a yard per carry worse against running backs. This year, it's only been 9 carries, but they're giving up 5.2 yards per carry with him off the field. So we'll see. And they haven't been honestly, the Browns have not been that good of a defense. They just haven't been.
Their run defense has.
Has it been? They give up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs.
They give up touchdowns.
They give up touchdowns, yeah. But also 4.3 yards per carry.
And that's what swings it for Dobbins. You look at the way he's played. If he scores, he's going to give you a good fantasy day. If he doesn't, you're going to be in trouble.
Just how confident are you in Ladd McConkey?
He's a number 3 receiver.
I've got him as a borderline number 2.
Like he's just not getting more than 6 targets per game, which is hard to say in this offense against this defense is safe.
That being said, they're throwing more. You pointed that out on Tuesday. What's like 35-ish pass attempts in their last 3 games on average?
On average. So they are giving more chances for their receiving core. But I mean, you see the over under 43 points. This feels like it's going to be a low scoring game where these two defenses play.
And Jameis Winston's been, he was good coming in late against Cincinnati, although granted against like prevent defense. He obviously was very good last week. And so is Tillman has been good 2 weeks in a row. Heath, what are your thoughts on the Browns passing game?
I would view Jameis in that same Bo Nix range. I think I have him 1 spot behind Bo Nix. Tillman is 1 more week as a number 3 wide receiver. If he has a big volume, big production, he may move into that top 24 conversation. If we can do it one more time, is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy since Amari Cooper was traded. I like Elijah Moore as a PPR flex, and I wouldn't completely give up on Jerry Jeudy yet.
Tillman is rostered in 66% of leagues. All right, so Tillman or Flowers? I think I asked you that earlier.
Flowers.
No, Tillman or Hopkins or Chiefs wide receiver?
Tillman
or Rashad White, PPR?
Tillman.
Yeah. Okay, Killman, I guess I should be calling him.
I feel like this could be like, a 12, 13-point game for one of the Browns receivers.
Just one. So
it's hard to say both in this matchup. It's a tough matchup. Chargers have been really good.
They allow the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. They've done a great job against Davante Adams, George Pickens, Marvin Harrison Jr. All of them scored 11 PPR fantasy points or fewer. So it's a tough matchup. I think play volume and target volume, like I said earlier, only 1 wide receiver's had more than 7 targets against the Chargers. It was Chris Olave, and he had a 100-yard game. So if the Browns can run a lot of plays and throw a lot of passes, I think they'd be okay. I don't know. I'm still not sure if we know that the Chargers have a really good defense or not. It's been good, but is it just that they run the ball and keep the ball out of the other team's hands? And then what about Nick Chubb? Like, what is the difference between Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins? I think they're so different in the rankings, but I don't really see that much of a difference.
They're both going to be touchdown dependent. They're both going to have, a lot of volume potentially. I mean, one guy, which is the shocking thing to say given their careers, but one guy's healthy. One guy is still, I think, working his way back. And so just given how the season has unfolded for both of them, I would start Dobbins over Chubb, but you're not wrong.
And I think, Dobbins had 7 targets last week and has at least 3 catches in 4 of his last 5 games.
That's a great point. He is their third down back, and he is more involved in the passing game for sure. I think any interest in Will Dissly, assuming he plays? He's got 18 targets in his last 2 games.
Yeah.
It's just hard with coming off the week that we just had of tight ends and, getting a guy like Hockenson back. And then I think Dissly's definitely in the conversation now of streaming options based on the targets. But this is clearly, however you feel. I'm not telling you one's going to be better than the other, but like Dalton Schultz's opportunity tonight, right, with all the receivers out versus Dissly. If Metcalf doesn't play and Fant's match up against the Rams and how good that is, so like that's where he is for me. But tight end premium, he should be rostered and potentially started. And, hopefully the targets continue to be there.
Todd wants to know, which DST would you start over the Chargers?
I would start the Saints. I would start the Commanders. And I would start...
Jerk.
I mean, Daniel Jones at home.
I know, I'm just kidding.
I think that's it.
Yeah, you guys have the Chargers DST very high.
I'd start the Bills.
Nick Chubb or Sam Laporta?
Laporta.
Chubb.
I can't tell which way the mustache
Especially if Evan Williams is out.
And then, all right, Tillman or JSN? Just looking for chat questions here.
JSN.
JSN if Metcalf is out. Tillman if Metcalf is in.
You agree with that, Heath, or it's JSN no matter what?
Yeah.
Okay. Tillman or Davante Adams?
Adams.
I mean, it better be.
I know. Herbert or Flacco?
Flacco.
One more. Tillman or Shakir?
Shakir, especially if Cooper doesn't play.
Tillman if Cooper plays, Shakir if not.
Let's go to Miami at Buffalo. Spooky name of the game. Dalton Cade or Amari Booper.
You just used kill the game before after telling me I could only use boo once.
Okay, fine. Then Amari Booper or Bua Tagovailoa. Bua Tagovailoa is pretty good, I think. So. Trick or treat for Bua.
A treat. Or trick.
Devon A-Chan massacre.
Yeah, I thought about that. When he used to be A-Chain, we would have been able to do something with that. Yeah. Okay, so Tua is a sit. He's a trick this week. He has scored more than 7.
There's got to be something with Tyreek Hill you can do.
Like what?
Hill?
I don't know. I don't think so. Tua scored more than 17.2
There's
points.
someone in the chat said Tyreek haunted house on the hill.
Oh, that's good.
Tyreek Hills have eyes.
That's good
There you
too.
go.
I think Bua Tagovailoa is the clear winner here, though.
No.
He hasn't been good against Buffalo. That's the bottom line. But neither is Jalen Waddle, really, and neither has Tyreek Hill. Like he's had 2 big games and had 3 bad games against Buffalo with Tua. So I think everyone's going to start him, but just be aware. Not great history there. Devon A-Chan, layup. Oh, this is a tailor-made matchup for him. The Bills give up the most receiving yards to running backs. He had 7 catches against them earlier this year.
There are 3 auto starts at running back that you shouldn't even blink at, and he's the 3rd.
And the other 2 are Henry,
Saquon, and Kamara. Matchup-wise, just matchups.
Okay. Yeah, Henry doesn't even have a good matchup.
No, but you're obviously I'm not saying you're not starting those guys, but that there are other guys you're not starting, but like those 3 are just matchup plus strong games.
Would you start Jalen Waddle or Cedric Tillman?
Waddle.
Heath, what'd you say?
Waddle.
Okay. So Waddle, in his history with Tyreek Hill and Tua on the field, he's got 200-yard games against Buffalo, but he also has 2 terrible games. So it's not that bad. He's scored 1 time in those 4 games, but not a lot of catches. No more than 4 catches in any of those 4 games with Tyreek Hill and Tua against the Bills. Bills giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, and they do not give up big plays. They are always one of the best in that category. Jonnu Smith or Will Dissly if you were desperate.
Dissly.
All right. Any hesitation on Josh Allen?
Nope.
No.
Would you start Jaden Daniels or Josh Allen?
Allen.
I think I have Allen 1 spot higher.
Okay. Dolphins do allow the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, but that will be put to the test. James Cook, easy one, layup.
Yep.
Start him.
And all right, so let's talk about the Bills wide receivers and how you see them against the Dolphins, who give up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. But have they done well against any good wide receivers? I would argue not really. Maybe Christian Kirk in week 1 catch for 30 yards, but they haven't not faced the toughest of competition here. So Heath, give me the rundown on the Bills receivers.
None of them are must starts. I rank it right now Cooper, Coleman, Shakir, but they're all number 3s, and like hopefully you don't have all 3 of them, so you have to make that choice. I would say it's kind of like what Jamey was saying about the Browns. One of these guys is probably going to score 13 fantasy points. I don't know which one. I do think, like as a rule, I generally like betting on the early pick rookie whose role seems to be growing. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Coleman just emerges.
And Jamey, your thoughts on these guys? Oh, where'd Jamey go? Disappear. Ooh, he disappeared. Now he's back.
Look, both Shakir and Coleman, since Cooper has arrived, have each had 14 plus targets total in the last 2 games. You're seeing a concerted effort to get Coleman going, and that's fun. And he's starting to produce. And hopefully it's one of those situations where second half of the season becomes a must start fantasy option. And then for Shakir, I know Heath made the joke yesterday. He catches every pass he's ever been thrown in the NFL. And it's a pretty reliable thing. So I just trust those 2 guys right now more so than I do Amari Cooper. But I agree with Heath. They're all number 3 receivers.
Shakir scored double-digit PPR fantasy points in all 6 of his games with a normal snap share. And that's with only 1 game with more than 7 targets. And he has not yet to play 70% of the snaps in a game. He's really doing some phenomenal things there. How do we feel about Dalton Kincaid? Dalton Kincaid or Hunter Henry?
Kincaid.
Kincaid easily if it's Jakobi Brissett. It's a tougher call if it's Drake May, but I would still lean Kincaid.
Okay, Dalton Kincaid or Cole Kmet?
Kincaid.
Kincaid.
How about Sam Laporta against the Packers or Kincaid against the Dolphins?
Laporta very easily if Evan Williams is out.
Let's read some chat questions. Shakir or Liggett?
Shakir.
Oh, I didn't talk about Mostert. I'm sorry. Mostert, JSN, or Bucky Irving?
JSN if Metcalf is out. Mostert if Metcalf is in.
I'll go Bucky over Mostert.
That's half PPR, by the way. Kincaid or Otton? That's an easy one. Otton. Oh, this is a great one. Scream Mostert.
Most hurt.
It does say most hurt, but I think you should just keep it as Scream Mostert. Tua or Geno Smith?
Geno.
Geno. Well, it's not easy if Metcalf's not there. We saw what Geno looked like last week, but yes, I would still go Geno.
And Waddle or Shakir?
Right now I have Waddle ranked higher, but I don't love it.
Waddle.
Waddle or Dell?
Waddle.
Okay, Waddle. Heath, where do you have Waddle?
Oh, Tyreek Hill. That's a good one.
26.
Tyreek Hill is good. All right, let's go to our next game. It is Las Vegas at Cincinnati. Spooky name of the game, Joe Burrow.
Are you just found a name that you could put Boo in the middle of on every team, and that was your whole shtick?
This is only the second game I did a Boo, right?
You had 2 last game.
Okay, but that was only one game.
Oh, I got something really scary.
What?
Gardner Minshew.
Yeah. Gardner Minshew scored 19 points last week. Don't hate on.
I got to start him in a league where super flex league where I have 4 quarterbacks. You want to talk about just the poor timing and bye week situation? 4 quarterbacks: Brock Purdy, Anthony Richardson, Russell Wilson, and Andy Dalton. Those are my 4 quarterbacks.
Oh God, I would just start Wilson and hope he figures out a way to get traded or something like that in the middle of the week.
I'm starting Minshew.
Yeah. No, the Bengals give up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, but we're not exactly excited about.
Could have gone Jakobi, Michael Myers.
Oh yeah, easy. Or just Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer.
Yeah. Oh God, that is so much better than Burrow. And I love Hollow. I love that movie too.
And since you didn't use Son of Sam yet, you could have done Alexander Mattis, Son of Sam.
That's a little wordy, but it's Joe Burrow on its own is not bad. It's all the boos though, like that I've used. All 2 of 3 of them. Anyway, how do we feel about Alexander Mattis, Son of Sam?
Number 2 running back.
Strong flex. I would have said strong number 2 running back, except for what Antonio Pierce said the other day, which just ugh.
Right. Well, so what did he say? He said they're sticking with Madison as the number 1 guy, right? But
they're going to give going to give White more work.
Right. Yeah. Madison is coming off a game with 14 carries for 15 yards. Granted, it was against the Chiefs, but he does have 17 or more touches in 4 straight games. This is a much better matchup. Before the Chiefs game, he was 10.1, 17.5, 15.3 PPR fantasy points. And even last week, 9.4 because he had 5 catches.
The nice thing is if White gets more work, I don't think it's going to be in the red zone or in the passing game because he wasn't getting those touches when he was the starter.
Yeah, I don't think this is a White is better than Madison. No stretch. But this is like, I'm with you. When I started the week, I was like, oh, great opportunity for Madison, borderline top 20 running back. Love the setup for him. Couldn't be better. And then I saw what Pearson, I was like, oh, I was like, it just killed the whole thing. So
Mostert or Madison?
Madison. Like he's just outside the top 24 for me. But it's it like dropped him down about 4 or 5 spots from where I was originally thinking. Like I was excited about Madison this week. Now I'm not as much.
All right, Jakobi Meyers. I'm excited about Jakobi Meyers. It's,
yes.
We've talked about a lot of wide receivers today, and this is one guy that I'm going to be starting. Like I'd start him over Jalen Waddle. Would you guys start Meyers over Waddle?
Yes. I start Meyers over Zay Flowers.
And I'm excited about Brock Bowers. He's top 2 in both formats. All right, Joe Burrow. Jamey, I know you like him at home. He's been a little disappointing. 3 straight games with fewer than 20 fantasy points at the Giants, at Cleveland, and Philadelphia. Is he an automatic start in both scenarios? with or without T. Higgins?
It's so funny because, just thinking about it, like we give Joe Burrow a pass when he loses T. Higgins, and we're crapping all over Baker Mayfield, who's outperforming him, and at least in one game without his top receivers. So probably something to revisit, but I'm hoping that Higgins plays. He, you said it, he didn't practice with the team. He did practice off to the side, and the stories that I read were, trending in the right direction. So hopefully he'll get out there. So Higgins starts. Yes, Higgins plays. He's an auto start. Higgins doesn't play, then you might have some tough calls to make between somebody like Sam Darnold or
Stafford.
Who?
Stafford.
Stafford is a good one. Given his matchup and his receivers. Maybe Kirk Cousins. Just given his matchup against Dallas. Dak Prescott given his matchup against Atlanta. So there's ways to look at it. Like I have Joe Burrow in about 5 leagues. I'm not looking to replace him. And carry a second quarterback. I don't have to.
Honestly, like the Raiders, they're not that bad against quarterbacks. They've struggled against some mobile quarterbacks. They gave up 3 rushing touchdowns combined to Fields and Bo Nix. But like Andy Dalton really is the only quarterback that's had a big game passing the ball against them. Not that they faced a murderer's row, but they held Lamar Jackson to 17 points. Patrick Mahomes last week scored 21. So, yeah, I don't know. Heath, you have him third? Or did you?
I have him third, yeah.
You're very confident in Burrow. Is that with Higgins, you're thinking?
No. We're not projecting Higgins to play. I don't think the Raiders defense is any good.
Yeah, it might be one where they're not as good as what they are on paper. One thing they do is they do limit the big plays. They keep everything in front of them. They've given up the second fewest completions in the NFL of 20 or more air yards. All right, we'll get to Chase Brown in a moment. He's the start of the week. Start Jamar Chase. If T. Higgins does play, where would you rank? Where do you think you'll rank T. Higgins?
Top 12.
Must start.
Okay. And then Chase Brown is the start of the week for Jamey. Heath, you want to give your thoughts on Chase Brown?
I think he's a number 2 running back. Probably scores a touchdown. Not going to do a whole lot in the passing game, most likely.
Would you start Chase Brown over Aaron Jones in a tough matchup?
No, I would not.
Would you start him over Aaron Jones? Is not a tough matchup. I'm sorry.
No. I didn't think so.
I did it again. Josh Jacobs in a tough matchup. I keep putting Aaron Jones on the Packers.
I would not.
No, but they're very close for me.
Would you start Chase Brown or I'll give you a wide receiver here. Chase Brown or Jalen Waddle?
Brown. We had a question in the chat. I saw Chase Brown or Kareem Hunt. I would start Chase Brown.
I have him 1 spot ahead of Hunt. I agree.
Okay, perfect. Start Chase Brown and Zach Moss do not start. And okay, Mike Gesicki. If Higgins plays, I'm assuming we're going to be Mike Gesicki. But if he doesn't play, Jamey, you were pretty high on him on the waiver wire show a couple days ago. What are we thinking about Mike Gesicki?
3-game sample size, 2 games where he's been, 12.3 PPR points or more. Should have been 14 PPR points or more, but he had a fumble last week against the Eagles. So the targets have been there, the production has been there, and the matchup I think is fairly safe. So T. Higgins out, Gesicki in.
Gesicki. So how about again like Hunter Henry or Gesicki?
I mean, that was our waiver wire discussion. So yes, I would take Gesicki over Henry if no Higgins.
Okay, how about Evan Ingram or Gesicki?
No, I would start Ingram, and part of that is like you don't want to carry those 2 tight ends. I think it's more roster construction.
Okay, fair. If you were willing to carry 2 tight ends, Sam Laporta against the Packers or Gesicki against the Raiders?
Again, it comes down to Packers injuries. So if their safety Evan Williams is out, it would be Laporta for me. But I think they'll be somewhat similar.
Yeah, and this every Gesicki question is assuming Higgins is out, because if Higgins is in, the answer is the other guy.
Correct. I would not even consider it.
Chase Brown or David Montgomery from the chat?
I believe they are back-to-back for me with Montgomery 1 spot ahead.
Elijah Moore or T. Higgins?
That's
no. Okay.
not even close.
Definitely Higgins. All right, next game. New England at Tennessee. Spooky name of the game. Will and Testament Levis.
Zombie Hunter Henry.
Yeah, it's better. But there's some humor to Will and Testament Levis, I would hope. I hope people got a little chuckle out of that. Updated stat of the game. The Patriots have allowed 80 rushing yards or a touchdown to 12 running backs in 8 games. If Tajay Spears plays, do you guys have any hesitation with Tony Pollard?
No.
Not against this matchup.
All right. New stat of the game, Rhamondre Stevenson. Let's look at his game scripts because he was annoying last week. I definitely sat him, and he definitely scored 2 touchdowns. His 4 good games were 2 wins, an overtime loss, and a 5-point loss. His 3 bad games were a 21-point loss, a 17-point loss, and a 16-point loss. They are 3.5-point underdogs, but I don't think they're going to lose by double digits here. So how do we feel about Rhamondre Stevenson, Jamey?
I think he's a low-end number 2 running back / flex. If he finds the end zone, I think you'll be happy with his production. If he doesn't, you'll probably be disappointed. It's just tough to trust him, especially if Brissett's starting, because then the offense isn't going to move as well.
Yeah, I think he's a slightly more flex than number 2 running back, but it wouldn't be surprised if, like you said, Adam, running back's so good this year. There's probably 30 guys that would normally be RB2s.
Rhamondre or Javonte?
Rhamondre.
I'm gonna put Rhamondre one spot ahead, or just made the change.
Rhamondre or Dobbins?
Dobbins.
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 All right. Sit Brissett. Drake May plays. We can have this discussion, but we're not expecting him at this point. He was limited in practice yesterday.
He's on the, I think, like, not to say that I think he's going to play. We have no information, but he is on the right path.
Yeah.
To get it limited on a Wednesday in the concussion protocol has often led to playing on Sunday.
Okay. So if he does play, would you start him, or would you start Demario Douglas?
I'd consider Demario Douglas if he played. I'm not considering Demario Douglas right now.
Correct.
All right. And we're going to keep an eye on L'Jarius Sneed, because not that he would be shadowing Demario Douglas, but the defense has been a lot worse the last 2 games. They've also played Buffalo and Detroit. So that's part of it as well. They're by far the toughest competition. And then Hunter Henry, how many spots would you move him up if Drake May were to play?
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, Henry is 15th for Heath, 16th for Dave, 16th for Jamey. Will Levis, we're going to sit. Mason Rudolph, we're going to sit. Tony Pollard, I think he's like a top 12-ish guy.
He's got him 12th.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Patriots, like I said, 4th most fantasy points allowed to running backs. Okay, that brings us to Calvin Ridley. And I think kind of a big gap between you guys. Let's see. Jamey has Ridley 33rd, and Heath has him 23rd. So, Heath, make the case for Calvin Ridley against the Patriots.
He'd had a ton of targets each of the last 3 games. I'll probably downgrade him a little bit, honestly, if Will Levis plays. But he had a ton of targets the last 3 games. It finally turned into a monster performance in the first game without DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm just a little bit more prone to believe that with a player of his pedigree, also, like, for all the good things we're saying about running back, wide receiver is awful.
Here's a question about Ridley. Start one of these guys. Ridley, Hopkins, Waddle, Coleman. Keon Coleman.
I'd go Ridley.
That's not my answer. I was just clarifying. Ridley for Heath. Jamey, Ridley, Hopkins, Waddle, or Keon Coleman?
Waddle right now, but I probably will move Ridley ahead of him when I adjust my rankings.
Okay. And that's it. That's it for this game. Titans or Patriots defense?
Titans if it's Jakobi. Patriots if it's Levis.
Well,
yeah, if it's Levis, that's true. That's a good point. What if it's Jakobi and Levis?
Then it's Patriots.
May and Mason.
Then it's Patriots. May plays, then it's Patriots.
I think May and Mason, I might just go find somebody else.
Yeah, I would find somebody else anyway.
Well, I hope everyone had a wonderful time sitting around and talking about football and leather helmets, and have a wonderful Halloween. And next week,
you wrote this, didn't you?
No. Next week, go out there and vote for Eisenhower, I say. Also, Heath, what are we doing for Halloween? Turn the lights off?
Hey, no politics. I actually been trying to figure that out. Probably turning the lights off. Maybe going somewhere so that I don't have to be quite as big of a jerk, but not passing any candy out tonight.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. Okay, that's it for Fantasy Football Today. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.